Carson's voice came through the truck speakers before Noelle realized the call had connected. She was watching him through the windshield, standing just outside the entrance of a rest stop on Route 17, his back to her, phone pressed to his ear. She had assumed he would be quick, 2 coffees, maybe something from the vending machine. She had been sitting with the heat running and her good ear turned toward the window, watching the other travelers move through the parking lot in the gray February light. Then the Bluetooth icon appeared on the dashboard display, and Troy's voice filled the cab. "You sound like you haven't slept in a week." "Close enough," Carson said. "Is it the job?" A pause. "Some of it." "And the other part?" Carson exhaled. Noelle heard it clearly. The particular sound of someone setting something heavy down. "I love her, Troy. I'm not saying I don't. But lately I feel like I'm running out of road. Every place we go, I'm thinking 3 steps ahead. Every time the hearing aid battery dies and she can't hear me across the room, I panic a little. I sit there and I don't know if I'm helping or just getting in the way." "That sounds exhausting." "It is. And then I feel like an awful person for saying that, because she's the one actually living it." There was a pause. Then Carson's voice came back quieter. "I just don't know if I'm built for the long version of this." Noelle looked down at her hands. Outside, Carson glanced toward the truck. Through the windshield, she watched his expression change when he saw the dashboard screen. He ended the call and walked toward the building without turning back. A minute later, he returned with 2 paper cups. He handed one through the window without quite meeting her eyes. "Cold out there," he said. "Yeah," she said. She took the cup. She pressed both hands around the warmth and watched the exit sign as he pulled back onto the highway. She did not tell him what she had heard. She already knew what she was going to do. She just hadn't found the moment yet. She met Carson 14 months before that morning. Noelle had been in the hospital for 11 days after the accident, a head-on collision on a rain-slicked stretch of road outside Norfolk that she hadn't caused and couldn't have avoided. She woke at 2 in the morning on day 3 with an unfamiliar ringing in her left ear and the particular fear that comes from not recognizing the ceiling above you. Carson was a transport coordinator at the hospital. He moved patients between floors and helped manage logistics during shift changes. He had no official reason to stop outside her room, but the door was partially open and the call button light had been on for several minutes without anyone answering. He knocked on the doorframe. "Need something?" She stared at him. He was in scrubs and holding a tablet and clearly had not anticipated the look on her face. "My left ear," she said. "I can't hear right. Is that supposed to happen?" He stepped inside and called the nurse. He stayed until someone came. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. He came back the following afternoon with a crossword book from the gift shop because he'd noticed she had nothing to read and the television remote was on the wrong side of the bed. He said the book was left over from the nurse's station, which she didn't believe but accepted. By the time she was discharged, she knew he liked bad coffee and long documentaries and that he had grown up in Richmond and moved to Norfolk for a job he hadn't planned on keeping and somehow never left. After the hospital, Noelle moved back in with her grandmother. Hattie's house on Dunmore Street was small and close to the water and smelled of the same cedar sachets it had smelled of since Noelle was 7 years old. Hattie was 73, arthritic in both hands, and still made biscuits from scratch every Sunday morning without complaint. "You're staying until you're right," Hattie told her the day she arrived with 1 bag and the new hearing aids still in the box. "I might be here a while then." "I know," Hattie said, and went back to the kitchen. The hearing aid took some getting used to. It amplified everything. The refrigerator hum, the neighbor's wind chimes, the particular pitch of Hattie's television at its only volume, which was loud. Some days, Noelle took it out and sat in the quiet that wasn't really quiet. Other days, she wore it all morning and felt almost like herself. She had been a music teacher at an elementary school before the accident. She had taken medical leave and had not called them back. She kept meaning to. Carson started visiting on Tuesdays, then on weekends, then without any particular schedule, which was how she knew something had shifted. Hattie watched him carry groceries into the kitchen, the first time without being asked, and said to Noelle, in a voice that did not lower itself for company, "He looks at you like he's afraid you'll disappear." "He has a worried face," Noelle said. "That's not his worried face." Hattie pulled a pan from the cabinet. "That's his other one." It was Hattie who told him about the record. On a Thursday evening in late October, she lifted an old vinyl sleeve from the bottom shelf of the bookcase and handed it to Carson while Noelle was washing up in the back room. She played this on the piano when she was 12, Hattie said. Played it until I had to hide the record so it wouldn't wear through. She still hums it when she doesn't know she's doing it. The record was a jazz standard, a 1968 pressing that had belonged to Hattie's sister. The sleeve was soft with age. Carson looked up and Hattie said, without sentiment, the needle skips near the end. Has for years. She's never heard the full song. He brought the sleeve into the front room and held it out to Noelle. Hattie says you used to play this. Noelle looked at it for a moment before answering. I haven't heard the ending in a long time. Why not? The record skips, and with the hearing aid the high notes come in wrong now, too sharp like static. She handed the sleeve back. It's fine. I know how the song is supposed to go. Carson set it back on the shelf. He didn't say anything else. Over the following 3 weeks, she noticed him looking things up on his phone more than usual. She didn't ask. She had a sense she already knew. He found a clean pressing at an estate sale 2 counties over. Same label, no damage, no skips. He also contacted an audiologist who specialized in calibrating hearing devices for musicians, confirmed the appointment, and told Noelle about it the morning it was scheduled. She went. The audiologist adjusted her settings and the high notes came in cleaner than they had in over a year. On the way back, Carson played the full song through the truck speakers and kept his eyes on the road. When the ending played through without skipping, Noelle turned toward the window. You've been planning that for weeks, she said. Maybe. She didn't say anything else, but she reached over and turned the volume up, and he didn't mention it. There were 3 things Noelle had quietly stopped letting herself want. The first was a live jazz performance. She had been to dozens before the accident. Small venues, low lighting, the kind of rooms where you felt the bass before you heard it. She hadn't gone back. She told herself the crowds were too unpredictable. She told herself it wasn't worth the confusion of too many sounds arriving at once. The second was seeing bioluminescence in the water. She had read about it in a library book when she was 19. Microorganisms that made the ocean glow blue in the dark, and had promised herself she'd see it someday. She still hadn't. The third was playing piano in front of people again, without stopping. She told Carson about the first 2 one evening on Hattie's porch when he asked what she missed most. She didn't tell him about the piano. That one felt too close to something she hadn't worked out yet. Carson listened and then said, the jazz one. There's a venue on Granby Street. We could go on a Tuesday, less crowded. She looked at him. It's not that simple. It could be. When something is easy for you, it doesn't automatically become easy. He went quiet. She could tell he was turning it over. He didn't dismiss things quickly. He just sometimes spoke before he'd finished thinking. I know, he said finally. I'm sorry. They went 3 weeks later. The room was smaller than she'd feared, and the music was close enough that the hearing aid barely had to work. She sat very still through the first song, and then something in her shoulders let go. On the drive home, she said little. But when he asked if she was glad they went, she said yes and meant it. What she didn't see clearly at first was the pattern running underneath all of it. Carson confirmed the audiologist appointment before asking her. He turned down a work trip to Richmond without mentioning it until she heard it from Troy offhand. He rearranged his Saturday schedule around hers but never said so, which meant she only discovered it by accident and then felt the weight of a debt she hadn't agreed to carry. One morning she found a printed list on the kitchen counter, parking near the jazz venue, transit routes that avoided the loudest intersections, noise ratings for restaurants nearby. He had done it the way he did most things, carefully and without asking whether she wanted it done. When she brought it up, he said he was only trying to help. I know, she said, but you planned my whole afternoon without checking with me first. I didn't plan it. I just did the research so you'd have options. You decided what options I needed. He set his fork down. He was tired. She had been watching it accumulate for weeks. The particular exhaustion of someone working hard to be patient and starting to feel the cost. She recognized the look. She had seen it before. She filed it away and didn't say the rest. The rest stop was on a Tuesday in late February. They were driving to meet his mother for the first time. She lived 2 hours south. Carson had been talking about the visit for 6 weeks. He had called ahead about the front steps. He had confirmed the parking situation by email. Noelle had packed her bag the night before. She put the vinyl sleeve at the bottom, not the record, just the sleeve soft with age, because it traveled easily and she liked having it near. When Carson pulled into the rest stop and said he needed 5 minutes, she nodded and settled in. She had her hearing aid in. She was watching a hawk on a fence post near the edge of the lot when the Bluetooth icon appeared. She sat without moving through the whole call. When it ended, she looked at her hands and thought about the sleeve in the bottom of her bag, and the 2-hour drive still ahead, and the hawk, which had already gone. When Carson returned and handed her the coffee, she took it. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Fine." She waited until they were back on the highway, until the interchange sign had passed. Then she said quietly, "I don't want to go today." He looked over. "Take me to the water instead." He didn't ask why. He took the next exit that bent toward the coast, and she watched the road change outside the window and held the warm cup in both hands and said nothing else. She told him that evening. Not everything at once. Enough. She said she had heard the call through the Bluetooth. She said she didn't blame him for what he'd said, because she believed he'd meant it honestly. She said that was almost worse. He sat very still. "You found the record for me," she said. "That was real. The jazz club was real. I'm not saying none of it was." She paused. "But you've been carrying something I never asked you to carry, and you've been making every decision around what you think I can handle, and the only person in this house who didn't know was me." He opened his mouth, then closed it. "I don't want you to explain it tonight," she said. "I want you to go home." She didn't watch him gather his things. She sat in Hattie's kitchen, after he walked out, and listened to the sounds of the house. The refrigerator, the distant water, the particular creak the back door made when the temperature dropped. Hattie came in from the hallway and looked at the empty chair, and then at Noelle, and didn't say anything. She put on the kettle. "Don't say it," Noelle said. "Wasn't going to," Hattie said. They sat together until the tea went cold. Noelle went back to school in April. Not her old classroom. She emailed the principal and asked for part-time, 2 days a week, while she figured out the rest. There was a position. She started on a Thursday with a group of third graders who had never had a music teacher before and treated the upright piano in the corner like furniture. The first day, she sat down on the bench and played a C scale, and half the class stopped what they were doing to watch. She also started taking proofreading work through a tutoring center on the days she wasn't in class. She and Hattie reorganized the kitchen together. The things Hattie needed moved lower. The things Noelle needed moved closer. They worked it out between them over 2 afternoons without either of them calling it anything. In May, she called the kayak company she'd read about, a small outfit that ran bioluminescence tours on the bay in warm months. She asked twice about the accessible options before she booked. The guide she was assigned had worked with people with hearing impairments before, she was told. She said she'd manage either way. She went on a Saturday in late June. The water was dark when they set out from the dock. The guide used hand signals. After the first 10 minutes, Noelle stopped worrying about what she couldn't hear and started looking at what was directly in front of her. When her paddle broke the surface, the water lit up blue. She stopped moving. The glow spread outward from the blade in slow rings and then faded back into dark water. She pushed the paddle in again, and it happened once more. That quiet, impossible light rising from somewhere she couldn't see through, as if the water had been holding it. Nobody had carried her there. Nobody had called ahead or planned the route or decided whether she could handle it. She paddled to the edge of the group and floated, and let the dark come back. At the school's winter recital in December, Noelle played alongside her third graders. The parents sat in folding chairs in the gymnasium. The children had practiced an arrangement she had written for them. Simple, 8 measures, something they could hold in their hands. She played the accompaniment, and when the last note landed and the applause came through in a wave of sound, she felt more in her chest than her ears. She sat still on the bench for a moment before she stood. She thought about Hattie in the third row in her good coat. She thought about the record with the ending that used to skip, which now played all the way through. She thought about the hawk on the fence post outside the rest stop, which had simply opened its wings and gone, before she'd even noticed it was deciding. The jazz, the bioluminescence on the water at night, the piano in front of people, played all the way through without stopping. 3 things she had quietly stopped letting herself want. 3 things she had gone out and found, on her own terms in her own time. Nobody had given them to her. That was the part she would carry longest, not as a wound, but as something she could hold in her own two hands and know for certain was hers.